Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
So the policeman pulls this guy over, and he says, "Step out of the car, sir."
Uh-huh.
He steps out of the car, and he said, "I'd like you to blow in this bag, please." The guy says, "But I haven't been drinking." He says, I know. He says, "But I've got an order of fries here I just picked up, and they're too hot."
Oh. That's really dumb.
Yes, it is.
We hit a new low with that one. I tell you who else has hit a new low. The state of Texas.
Oh, they certainly have. You are right.
On December the 4th, a new law was enacted for the state of Texas, which you may have heard about in the news.
It was called Texas Senate Bill 8, and it officially went into effect on the 8th. So it's a law that's been passed already.
They call right away in Section 1, it says this act may be cited as the Texas Women's Privacy Act. So even the name that they gave to it is skewing it to be a certain way. This is what we're trying to do is we're not trying to attack trans people here, but we are trying to protect women's privacy is what they say. What it really is it's a transgender bathroom bill.
That's right.
So I went and pulled up the text of it, and you can do a search for this. It's all public information. Few things that I want to address here. The core of the law says this: a political subdivision or state agency shall designate each multiple occupancy private space for use only by individuals of one sex. It goes on to define all of those terms, but a private space essentially meaning a bathroom or a locker room or those kinds of things. And then it says they must take every reasonable step to ensure an individual whose sex is opposite does not enter the private space. Now, it's interesting to me how they define these, because they talk about sex means an individual's biological sex, either male or female. And then they define female and they define male. Female means an individual who naturally has or will have or had or would have, but for a congenital anomaly or an intentional or unintentional disruption, a reproductive system designed to produce, transport, and provide eggs for fertilization. And then male is all the same thing, but having a reproductive system designed to produce, transport, and utilize sperm for fertilization. So it's interesting how they are saying, okay, look, we understand that not all women have uteruses. We understand that not all men have fully functioning reproductive systems. But if your body was intended to have those things, if you were supposed to have those things, then we consider you that sex.
What they're really saying is we are defining you as what you were born with.
That's what they're trying to do anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do there. But like it explicitly says, so somebody that is intentionally changing those things, it doesn't matter. That doesn't count. And I think my immediate thought when I read that definition is all of the transgender men that have been taking testosterone for years have a full face of facial hair.
Absolutely.
Full beards,
yes.
Have deep voices.
Of course.
And now the state of Texas is saying that these institutions need to mandate that all of those men, all of those individuals who clearly look, act, sound like men, they're supposed to use the women's restrooms. And then someone like me has to use the men's bathroom.
Right.
There are not too many men that I think would feel comfortable having me in the bathroom. It would feel really awkward, I would think.
I would think so.
And that's the idea is, we're protecting women. This is what it's supposed to be, is we're protecting women. But what it really does is it makes a whole lot of people, like if I were to follow this law, I'm going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable.
Sure. They'd look at you as you walk in and say, "What are you doing in here? You're in the wrong restroom."
In fact, they would think that I am violating the transgender law.
They certainly would.
They would, because who is the target of this is masculine women. It's the people that like, a woman with a short butch haircut, and especially if she's got a deeper voice, and she walks in and anybody thinks that she's too masculine, she's the one that's going to be hurt by this. She's not transgender.
Right.
She doesn't present, she doesn't have long hair, and she's not, going by all the beauty standards or whatever. And those are the people that really get hurt by this.
Well, and it works the same way on the other side as well. The men who are more coming off as more feminine and maybe have long hair or whatever, but not that it matters.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
Yeah, you've got that same situation on the other side.
When I used to have long hair back in high school, I was not at that point in tune with my own sense of being transgender, but I'm sure I did have long hair because in some sense I resonated with having long hair. That felt good to me, but I was figuring I was presenting that way because it was, that was the culture at the time.
Oh, sure.
We were all metalheads, and it was, was kind of a carryover. Well, you had the same thing, that you were a long-haired hippie.
Yeah, well, I was actually I was in a rock band.
Sure.
And for 4 years I was in a rock band, and my hair was naturally long, and it was appropriate for what I was doing, and I was comfortable with it. I felt as though I was playing the part of a rock star, which I was in my own mind.
Well, sure, it's like that old Pete Seeger song where he talks about being out on the road, and then he says the same old cliches. Is that a woman or is that a man?
Oh, yeah.
And we used to have that all the time, and I was not trying to present feminine, but yet there were plenty of people that looked at me and said, what are you doing using the men's bathroom? Now, if I had to justify myself every single time that I went, that would be absurd. But now what they're wanting is for me to do exactly that. Now, this law is making me, so if I come to Texas and I am here's one that we maybe don't think about very often, the airport. Most of the major airports there are publicly owned. So that means the Dallas airport, the Austin airport, the Houston airport. If I go there, I am supposed to now be using the men's bathroom. And that's very likely because I might end up flying down and I will almost certainly have to use the bathroom.
And ironically, once you get on the plane, if you want to use the bathroom, they're unisex.
Right. Now, what this is basically saying, it's saying that you can't then have a unisex bathroom. This is my reading of this, at least.
Yeah.
Is you can, as long as it's a single stall.
Oh.
And apparently many places in Austin are trying to get around this by changing to single stall, which is good. If we're able to make those work, I think that may be the direction that we all end up going.
Well, it certainly works in our house.
Yep, it sure does. Well, and I will tell you, when I first transitioned, I looked for single stall places.
Oh.
I didn't want to go because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And there was a period where any bathroom felt unsafe for me. And I am not alone in that. Many transgender people feel exactly that same way.
But what this law actually says is it says that these restrictions impact public schools, anything public schools, colleges, municipal buildings, hospitals, libraries, state agencies, detention facilities, family violence shelters, and lots more. Airports, you suggested, and places that are basically publicly owned.
Right. Now let's talk about a few places that are not going to be affected, because you might think that these would be affected, but they're not. So any private business, so for instance, this will not affect any restaurants, any stores, any malls, nothing like that.
Right.
Private
Convenience stores.
Yes, private schools will not be affected. Hospitals and medical clinics, unless they're state-run, but most are privately run, so that won't affect there. Of course, private colleges or universities, places of worship, That will be good. Any churches, especially that are affirming churches, do not have to implement this. And any nonprofit spaces that are not government owned, which is really good because that means that groups like the Montrose Center in Houston or the Resource Center Dallas, Equality Texas, Out Youth, which is a group in Austin, any of the PFLAG chapters, or Transgender Education Network of Texas, which is abbreviated as TENT, they are not going to have to follow these rules, which I am very, very glad about for them. But, of course, any of those groups that are meeting in public spaces, they will be affected by it. And a few of the institutions you may not have thought about, public libraries. How many PFLAG groups meet in a public library?
14.
I bet it's a lot more.
It certainly is.
Well, in Texas, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of PFLAG groups that are meeting in public libraries.
Yeah.
Public parks, public rec centers, city pools or community centers, courthouses, DMV offices. You go to renew your driver's license, you got to use the bathroom that, for me, I've got to use the bathroom that doesn't fit, doesn't make sense. State museums, historical sites, any government building staff bathrooms.
That would mean things like when you're driving along the highway, you want to stop at the wayside. There's another one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so if I stop at a Buc-ee's, I'm okay.
Yes.
But if I stop at a wayside, now we've got an issue.
Now, I want to point out that this is so far strictly the state of Texas. It is not anywhere else at this point. But there's always the danger that this concept can spread. This ridiculous thinking can continue to spread. So that's the reason we want to address it here.
Yeah. Now, to me, one of the worst parts about this, other than the fact that it's just unjust, but it's not just unjust, it's who it's punishing. Because you notice the thing about this law is that it's not actually punishing the transgender people. It's punishing the institutions. So it's turning people that want to do the right thing, that legitimately want to help trans people, which may or may not. I mean, we don't know, but there's lots of good-hearted people at every level of these institutions. And now what it's saying is if they don't enforce these rules, they are the ones that could have the penalty. A $5,000 penalty for the first violation and $25,000 for the second or subsequent violations. So that means that now at the University of Austin, if there's an LGBTQ group and they want to make sure that they are protecting the students that are there so that their gender identities are fully protected, you know, we're going to make sure that you can use the bathroom that you want to. It means that those people that are actually running the groups, not the people that are running the groups themselves, but the institutions that are allowing them to meet there, are going to be required to force those transgender kids to use the wrong bathroom.
Exactly. And there are no fines or criminal penalties for individuals, that you've said. And so the penalties only apply to the government-owned entities. We don't really even know what all these government-owned entities are. Some airports, for example, are privately owned. Some are not. How are you going to determine that? I suspect it's not our responsibility. I suspect the responsibility falls with the owner of the organization or of the building. And that's how they try to figure it. But also, even though the people who are using these facilities are the people that are the issue, no one has a right to demand personal or medical information from anyone if they come to ask that. So how are the people going to know that this is being enforced? It's really difficult for them.
Right.
I mean, what is the point of this whole thing? The point is to show that we think it's one man, one woman kind of thing. Is that what it is? Or is it that we can use this information to punish an organization we're not happy with. We are not happy with this library because this library is allowing some of those books in there to be checked out by people when we think those books should be banned. Well, we haven't been able to do anything about that, but I think they may have been violating the law here. So let's go in and spy on them. And when we see somebody doing it wrong, we can make sure that they're going to be hit in the wallet for that one.
Right. So even if you accept the purpose of this law, which I think is very, very damaging in and of itself, but let's say that we can agree on that and say, well, okay, fine. I understand the point that you're trying to do. And for the sake of argument, let's go ahead and I'll agree. But even still, what this is doing is it's not punishing the person that they're trying to punish. It's punishing the institution that's allowing it, turning them into institutions that must create surveillance systems. So they're basically forcing all of these different institutions to now monitor what's in somebody's pants or what used to be in somebody's pants.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they better not let anybody that some radical conservative in Texas thinks shouldn't be using that bathroom to actually use it. How do we respond to this now? We're going to talk about that right after the break.
I'm Monica Scarbin. I love listening to the Transcendent podcasts, probably because I've been a guest speaker. I've been listening to these podcasts for over 2 years now and have found them to be not only inspirational, but very informative and emotionally lifting to my spirits, especially when I'm not feeling very hot. I'm a supporter, and I'm glad to be a supporter. Please go to Transcendent.com, click on support. By as little as $3 a month, you can cancel at any time.
So what's the best way for us as allies and as LGBTQ folks to respond to this? Because really, as we see the way that this law is structured, it's not really targeting us. It is targeting the institutions to make them pay, to make them come down harder on us so that they don't get hit. What are some ways that we can respond in ways that are going to protect the institutions that we love and care about?
Well, I think one of the organizations in Texas that you mentioned earlier, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, called TENT, they have created what they call pink cards. And a pink card, it's a tool to help members of the LGBTQ plus community assert their rights in situations where somebody might try to question or detain them. That's the thing that I think we'd be worried about, is being detained. So what do these pink cards do? They have little tips on them, things that you need to know. And you can get these free from Tent.
Yeah, I tried to look them up, and it doesn't look like they have them on their website yet, but their website is transtexas.org.
I'm sure they're going to be available free in the very near future. The first thing they say is, do not answer questions about your gender identity or medical history. You have that right. You don't have to do that. Second thing, do not sign anything without speaking to a lawyer. If they say, well, I have something here and sign this form, you're not required to do that. Third thing, and more importantly, do not engage with anyone who comes to your home or workplace claiming to represent the government. Again, there is no requirement that you have to do that. And if you are approached, you can ask, am I free to leave? If the answer is yes, leave. If not, you have the right to remain silent and request an attorney.
I love the script that they give. And this, I would recommend using equally for anyone, whether you are transgender or not, if you are questioned. Because, as I said, many cisgender people will also be questioned as a result of this law. You just say, I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, sign, receive, or give you any documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution. I do not give you permission to search my person or belongings based on my Fourth Amendment rights, and I choose to exercise my rights.
What's nice about that script that they have given you, you can use that anywhere. This is not just for Texas. If you come up with something else, you can always use that phrase anywhere because this is quoting the U.S. Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution is the true answer anywhere in the United States and its territories. So that's another important thing to know.
One thing that this law really talks about, one of the most extreme parts, is the way that it locks the courts out. The way that it locks the courts out. It says a court does not have jurisdiction to pronounce any provision invalid or unconstitutional. A court may not restrain enforcing any provision or application of this chapter. So in other words, this is the law and institutions must follow this according to the law, and the courts have no way to say, well, this situation is a little bit extreme, it's a little bit too much. The courts don't have any way to do that. So that means that we have to do every part that we have. This is not a situation where we can say, well, you know what, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up against this unjust law because it doesn't come back on us. It comes back on the institutions. It's a little bit like if a child goes out and steals something and you throw the mom and dad in jail.
Yeah. So another thing that's difficult about this bill is that anyone can sue anyone else if they have a problem. So some stranger sees somebody in a bathroom and they think that this person is violating that law. They can sue the university or the library or whatever that situation is. Anyone has the right to be able to do that, to sue them, saying that their rights are being violated, which really makes no sense at all. So they're looking often for an opportunity to, I saw something here and, I can make a little money with that.
Right. And so it reminds me so much of, like Nazi Germany, where they're turning people. They're taking the people and they're saying, we're going to incentivize you to turn on other people. Or, they used to do this in Roman culture as well, that they would say, if you turn on somebody, then you get the money for this. Wow. And all that does is it makes a few loose cannons out there. You give them a whole lot of power to create a whole lot of problems. And who are they creating it for? It's not the transgender people, although it ultimately is. But even more than that, it's the institutions. It's the library.
Yes.
Right? It's the fire department.
The fact that this is even being brought up seems so ridiculous to me, because when I was young, I lived in Japan for 2 years without ever having returned back to the States. And during that 2-year period, this was back in the 60s, all of the bathrooms were just unisex. I could walk into a bathroom and there would be men and women both in there. There'd be women over there. There'd be guys standing at a urinal and the woman over there using the mirror to fix her hair.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
That happened I don't think it happens anymore, but it was totally acceptable. There was nothing different about it. So those are the kinds of things that in other countries, things could be a little bit different. And people who have not had experiences like that, who maybe haven't traveled, who spent their entire life in Texas, in the Texas legislature, thinking this is the way it's going to be. Yeah, maybe for you in your mind, but you're not even the majority. You're just the person who gets to vote on that law instead of all of the citizens.
I'll tell you what this is. This is not a law that's written by people that have had experiences of encountering transgender people in the bathroom. This is a law written by people who are imagining the worst case scenario that they can think of,
Yeah.
scenarios that never happen in real life, in imagining the worst, most unpassable trans woman that they can think of, doing the most strange, bizarre things. These things do not happen. And they've written this whole law. They are completely making a mountain out of a molehill.
Exactly.
Not even a molehill, but it's trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And it's making a huge problem in its place. And why is it? Because it's politically expedient.
Yes.
And we, on our last Take 5 segment, we talked about we need to tone down the rhetoric. And this is the same thing on the other side.
Good.
It's time to tone down the rhetoric.
Yeah.
Well, we are doing our best to tone down the rhetoric. We're doing our best to bring a realistic view to all of the issues.
And the reason we're bringing this up, even addressing this, that's coming up, first of all, because it's so ridiculous, we want to let people know out there, here is one state that's coming up with something that is just meaningless and foolish. And there is a danger that this can spread to other states. So we want to make sure we continue to be aware of it. And there are organizations out there that do fight for us out there. Organizations like PFLAG, like Tent, or other organizations out there. There's many of them. And there are also other private organizations, like religious organizations, will be fighting for that as well. While we're not going to be fighting with you anymore, I do want to do a couple of shout outs. And one of those is there is somebody listening to us in Manchester, Tennessee. And we just had another person that's in Melbourne, Victoria, down under. We want to thank you for joining us. New listeners are so important to us. And I'd like to know a little bit more about you. Reach me at transcendent@gmail.com. And I tell you, we read every one.
And with that,
We'll see you Monday.